you to this exciting Zoom meeting to give you some very valuable information. My name is Gladstone Johnson. If you know me in the United States, you might know me as Pastor Glad. But I am very excited to introduce to you a personal friend of mine, Dr. Robert Robinson, who is the inventor of the Jamunogizer product, and there are many other products. We call it, it's branded as Jamunogizer for those of you who are in diaspora. So let me just give you a brief introduction of Dr. Robinson and turn things over to him. Dr. Robinson is a Christian and he's a research scientist. His philosophy is that the pursuit of science in the absence of sound philosophy is an exercise in futility. Dr. Robinson is eminently qualified with the first degrees in medicine and surgery. He also completed postgraduate studies and was awarded a Doctor of Medicine a doctorate in internal medicine. Dr. Robinson completed his post-DM research in diet schedule, and there's a word here that he has to pronounce for me, PATHOPHYSIOLOGY, of the metabolic syndrome at the Tropical Metabolic Research Unit that's in the UWI. Dr. Robinson authored a book, it's called The Sabbatical Diet. He's the producer of the Sabbatical Way Health and Wellness Program. He's also the inventor and holder of the patent for the Immunogizer product in Jamaica and the Jamunogizer, which is packaged for the diaspora. Dr. Robinson is a family man married to Arlene, and they have 3 children. Please allow me to introduce to you Dr. Robert Robinson.
Hi, Grant. Thanks for the introduction. It's pathophysiology of diet schedule, the word you wanted me to clarify there. Well, welcome to all who are online. I hope this session this evening will be very beneficial to you and your family and whoever you share this with. Now, I'm going to put on the PowerPoint which we're going to use for this evening. Okay. And everybody should be seeing it now. Where do I get this?
Need some water.
Okay. All right, the topic is how to improve your health using biblical principles, and we'll be looking at the sabbatical diet and the formulation of the Jamunogizer product. So I'm going to go straight into it. Now, as Christians, one of the things that is an obvious dilemma is often the conflict we see between the biblical expectations of the physical compared to what we are seeing in reality. Now, what do I mean by that? When you read the scriptures, let's say look at Psalms 139 verse 40, it talks about how the body is fearfully and wonderfully made. But if you were to look at the statistics in reality, you wonder what is happening, because let's take the issue of lifespan. Most of us, by the time we are 40, we get some major disease, and we die sometime between 70 and 80. The average lifespan range somewhere between 70 to 80. The Chinese probably has the highest, which is about 80, then the Japanese. In US, it's about 78, and Jamaica, we are probably down to about 73, 74. But the human lifespan should be 120 years. Now, this is both in scripture and from science. In scripture, if you look in Genesis 6 verse 3, it tells you that the human lifespan should be 120 years. But when you go to Psalms, what there is being observed is 70 to 80 years. But when you study science, science is saying that the human lifespan should be 120 years based on genetic studies. What we look at as a section of gene, we call it telomere, that we examine, and it should last 120 years. Now, overweight is probably the most popular disease, and it's 40% worldwide now, and it's increasing at a rate at 1% per year. Diabetes is expected to double in the next 10 years. That will be 1 in every 4 persons will have diabetes. In the last year, since 1950, asthma, arthritis has actually increased 8 times. And statistics coming out of the States saying 1 in every 3 person will develop cancer at some point in their lifetime. In Jamaica, it's around 1 in 6 to 7 now. So obviously, reality is showing a different picture from what we are expecting, and therefore something has definitely gone wrong. And it's really our food and water. And that's what we are going to be looking at over the next 4 weeks, is how the scripture has to tell us how we should eat and why we are getting these and how to solve these problems. And I've structured it into 4 weeks, as I said. Week 1, which is this week, we'll be looking at, and we're going to do a historical overview of how I came to see these key principles in the Bible, which we need to apply to solve the problem. And today we'll look at the first one, which is the sabbatical diet. Then week 2 and week 3, we're looking at the formulation of Jamunogizer. And again, looking at what scripture has to say about prebiotic supplementation. No more about the word. When we get to that era, we'll break it down. And also what it has to say about desmutation, catalysts. And in the 4th week, we hope to do some testimony and sharing. All right, my source of knowledge, as I said before, comes from the scriptures. I look for these principles in the scriptures, but then I search the scientific literature. We have done experiments to confirm these positions and see if that is so. And we have started a clinic over 15 years now, where we have been observing how patients respond to these principles when we apply them to their diet, etc. And obviously there were spiritual revelations which will come out as we go along, which has assisted me a lot in coming out with these truths. Okay, so first we're going to do a historical review of the findings and the biblical solution. Now, I returned from Trinidad in 1988. After finishing my first degree, I went to Trinidad, did some internship there, came back, and started postgrad study in 1988. Now, one of the things that I recognized was that many of the medical experts, they were not the healthiest persons around. I mean, there were people who were doing things in diet which were looking far healthier than them. And the question is, why are these people the experts, yet they are not, seem to be very healthy? And the thing is that medicine is not concerned about being healthy. It's really concerned about treating sickness. So that is what motivated me initially to start looking at the scripture and see if I could find something there to, both personally and otherwise, to help the patients to see how to improve our health. And what I did, I look at the scripture, I look at it from a scientific point of view. So I take a scripture and say, okay, let us scientifically analyze it and see what it would say about health. So we try to, obviously there are spiritual implications for each scripture, but we try to look at it from a scientific point of view. And one of the things that came out early was that there is a universal diet in the Bible, and it is described in Exodus chapter 16, and Ezekiel chapter 4 gives us an idea of what a balanced diet look like. And that's what we'll be looking at today. But after 1999 to 2004, despite using this diet, I happened to develop very severe rheumatoid arthritis. When I say severe, in 2004, just before the breakthrough, I was probably using somewhere in the region of 16 to 20 tablets a day just to control pain. And the intention was to try and get some of the newer treatments. At the time, I was trying to even in the US to see that I had some newer treatment at the time, tissue necrosis factor inhibitors, which wasn't available in Jamaica, to see if I could control the pain and suffering I was having at the time. Now, coming from church one night, driving alone, I happened to hear a voice in the back of the car saying to me that my problem is due to too much yeast in the body. Now, at first I thought somebody was in the car who had slipped in while I was at church, but that was not the case. And I thought it was a word from the Lord giving me some direction as to why I was having this problem. Now, earlier in my life, I did some work in agriculture. We used to do some research with animals, and we used to try to modify various vats to see how we can manipulate the yeast and bacterial growth and so on. So in fact, a lot of that research material was still in the house. So when I came home that night, I spent some time studying, reviewing some of that literature that I had done before, and was able to put together a product that would reduce the yeast level in my body. Now that involved the use of honey and some acids that I had at the time. And I was able to put together a formula that within a month time, my situation had dramatically changed. So at that point, I said, let me look into the scripture and see what the scripture has to say about the use of what we call prebiotics. Prebiotics are the compounds that we use to manipulate bacterial growth and yeast growth and so on. And obviously, the best prebiotic that exists, and in fact the most powerful prebiotic that exists, is wine. And as we know, if you read 1 Timothy 5, verse 23, it tells you that Paul is telling Timothy to use a little wine for his stomach, but also for his frequent illnesses. So what I did between 2004 to 2015 is try to pull from wine what are the prebiotics that are present, and we use that in the Immunogizer product. And that we'll discuss in more detail in week 2. Now in 2015, I was discussing with a friend about the pros and cons of water infiltration. And it then struck me at that time that, you know, water is the major component of wine. And medical experts does not consider the minerals that are in water, natural minerals that are in water, as being important. And wonder how important these are. So I started to do research into looking at the natural mineral component of water, not the way how we supplement it. We supplement the minerals based on how we think it should be, but rather how they are in the natural situation. And to our surprise, when we started to supplement that in the Immunogizer, not only were we seeing disease improving, but now disease that were considered irreversible, that there was no cure for, all of a sudden started to heal at very dramatic rate. And we're able to work out that these minerals runs up a system called the desmutation system. And again, we're going to deal with that more in week 3 and explain what that means. All right, so I'm going to focus now on the sabbatical diet and how we should eat. And in fact, there is a universal diet, and that is the sabbatical diet. And it is outlined very carefully for us in Exodus chapter 16. Now, when you read Exodus chapter 16, it will show you that there are some non-negotiable instruction that God gave to Moses for the Israelites. And he tells them a number of times that they must eat to the full in the morning. Now, as we know, the Israelites often doesn't follow the instructions. And if you read in verse 20, you will notice that they were not following Moses' instructions. And the manna which they would have collected began to spoil and grow maggot and such. But when you turn to verse 21, something strange happened. Because all of a sudden, the manna would melt at lunchtime when the sun got hot. So what you are seeing is God intervening into the whole process and saying, look, you either eat the thing in the morning or you don't get it. In other words, it's not negotiable. You must eat a full meal in the morning. And it goes on later to describe that the manna was not only sweet, but starchy. In other words, it was like wafers of honey, and it was like coriander seed. Now, so one of the things that the diet is saying is that you must have a full meal in the morning, a full breakfast, and it must be before 12. Now, on the 7th day, they used to, on the 6th day, I should say rather, they would collect 2 portions, one for that day and one for the other day, for Saturday or the 7th day. Now, it's not clear in the scripture when they consume that meal on the 7th day. At one time, I thought they consume it in the morning, but after speaking to a Bible scholar, he said, no, in fact, they consume it 6 o'clock in the evening, because the Sabbath was the day for rituals. They were, you know, they had all these sacrifices they were doing, and as a result, they didn't eat that meal until in the afternoon. So therefore, what you are seeing is 6 heavy breakfasts followed by fast on the 7th day. Now I'm going to try to explain what happens when you look at it from a physiological point of view. And to follow this table, we're going to go in a horizontal way. All right. Now there are 3 main hormones that controls how your food is metabolized. And in the first column, I list them there: insulin, cortisol, and leptin. Everybody should be familiar with insulin. So let's look at insulin, and we're going to go horizontal now in the second line, right? Now, the insulin is controlled by your carbohydrates. And you have 2 types of carbohydrates, basically. You have carbohydrates, we all know about the sugars and the sweets carbohydrates. And we all know about the starchy carbohydrates, right? Now, as I said to you before, the manna was both sweet and starchy. Now, there are actually 2 types of insulin. We talk about short-acting insulin and long-acting insulin. When you eat something sweet, your body releases the short-acting insulin. When you eat something starchy, your body releases the long-acting insulin. Now, going across the insulin row, notice that when insulin is released, it causes your body to build fat. And that's a popular thing. You hear people saying that sugars cause you to put on fat. That's true. Insulin, especially the short-acting insulin, causes you to increase in fat. On the other hand, the long-acting insulin causes you to increase in protein. So insulin is what we call an anabolic hormone. It causes increase in fat and increase in protein. Now the next line, we talk about cortisol. Cortisol is your main steroid. And we all know about steroids. We have heard doctors using steroids for various conditions, arthritis, asthma, or for various things, right? Now, unlike insulin, which is controlled by the carbohydrates, cortisol runs what we call a circadian rhythm. This is a 24 hours rhythm. So 8 o'clock in the morning, your cortisol is at its highest point. And it stays at that point till 12 o'clock, midday. And after midday, it comes down to its lowest point, 8 o'clock in the evening. And it stays low until the following morning. So it runs what we call a circadian rhythm. Now, cortisol effect on fat is that it causes you to break down fat. Its effect on protein is causes you to break down protein. So it is the exact opposite of insulin. So while insulin is what we call anabolic, or building fat, building protein, cortisol is breaking down fat and breaking down protein. Now, 2 o'clock in the night, while you're sleeping, another hormone comes out, which is the third hormone, which is leptin. And we're on the bottom row now. Like cortisol, it is circadian. At 2 o'clock in the morning, it is at maximum. And in the evening, 8 o'clock in the morning, it goes down to minimum. And unlike the other 2 hormones, it's both mixed catabolic, in other words, it breaks down fat, and it's also anabolic, it builds up protein. All right. Now the next slide is showing you what happens with breakfast and with fasting and what occurs at night while you're sleeping. Now we're going to go in the column direction, or rather rows. We're going to go look along the column. So the first column tells you about the effect, which you can have fat production, protein production, and glucose or sugar utilization. Now, if you have breakfast, if you have a heavy breakfast, your cortisol is going to be at its max. Remember we said cortisol is max 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, if you had a carbohydrate breakfast, like as described in Exodus 16, a manna, which is both sweet and starchy, you're also going to have a high level of insulin. Now, because you have a mixture of cortisol and insulin, it's going to cause, there are going to be some metabolic change that switches off fat production and switch on protein production. So every time you have a heavy breakfast, your body is going to try to build new tissues. Okay, and it's going to use up a lot of sugar to do that. So the sugar is being utilized. Now, in the next column, we look at fasting. Again, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, so your cortisol is at max. But because you're fasting, then there is no insulin. So cortisol is going to rule, and it's going to cause you to go into fat production. And as a result, it's going to break down protein. Remember, it's catabolic to protein, while causing your system to still use glucose. In the night, the leptin is going to instruct your body to do whatever the instruction came that it was derived from the previous morning. So if you had a breakfast that previous morning, you are going to continue to stop producing fat and produce protein. If on the other hand you had fasting, it is going to cause you to increase fat and break down protein. So leptin follows whatever instruction was given in the previous morning. So what we are seeing is a restoration system. The diet we have that God designed for us is one that restores the body on a continual basis. So on the one hand, if you fast, your body is getting rid of tissues, getting rid of protein, and storing fat. On the other hand, if you have a heavy breakfast, your body is building new tissue. So you could look at it, at one case, you're removing old tissue, and in another case, when you have the breakfast, you're replacing it with new tissue. So what is happening is that your breakfast really operates a switch. So you're switching from catabolism or removal to anabolism, depending on if you didn't have your fast or you had a breakfast. Okay? And the optimal ratio, obviously, is 1 fast to 6 breakfasts. And that makes sense because to break down something is a much faster process than to rebuild it. It doesn't take very long for someone to break down your house, but it's going to take a much longer period to rebuild it. All right, so is the scientific evidence supporting what I'm saying? So when you go into the literature, you'll find that persons who eat a heavy breakfast tend to have a lower weight and less likely to develop diabetes compared to someone who doesn't have a heavy breakfast on a regular basis. Science has also shown that people who fast at least 1 day for the month, and this was done from the Mormon study, have a lower blood cholesterol, and it actually is equivalent to taking cholesterol lowering tablets. So obviously the science is saying a heavy breakfast and fast have beneficial effects. Now in our clinic, as I said, we have studied this thing, over 15,000 patients we have looked at over time, putting them on this diet and so on. What we found is that just on the diet alone, we found that people would put on a little weight in the first month, and then after that they lost weight at a rate of about 1 to 3 pounds per year. Now that sounds very small, but the current situation as it is now is that the average person is putting on 3 to 5 pounds per year. Obviously, there's more to losing weight than just eat, follow the diet. But what we did find was that the weight was going in the opposite direction, although not fast. We also observed that diabetics' blood sugars would do better, blood pressures would do better, and cholesterol levels would do better. So we found that all what we call the chronic diseases or the metabolic syndromes diseases were all reversing, but not at very rapid rate, but it was consistent. What we also found was that invariably, everybody after 3 months would report that persons were saying to them that they look younger, and in fact, what the diet was doing was slowing the aging process. Because what you saw, based on what I just explained, is that you are removing parts. You're continually removing parts and replacing them with new parts. In other words, there's a continuous restoration going on. And if you are restoring at a continuous rate, then the likelihood of disease is less. All right, just to give a little on how the diet prevents diabetes. Diabetes is probably one of the worst diseases in terms of complications that we are seeing worldwide now. Now, a typical cell has what you call insulin receptors. And the insulin that is released from the pancreas after eating food will attach to that receptor, and that will cause the cell to absorb sugar or glucose. Now, a cell would have more than one receptor. The diagram is just showing one receptor there, which is the blue dot, and the cell, which is the lighter blue, the square structure there. Now, if you know about anything about steroids and people who have taken steroids before, you might hear that one of the side effects of steroids is diabetes. And the reason for that is that, remember I said steroids is catabolic, it breaks down tissue. So in the morning, if you're not eating breakfast and you are releasing a high level of steroid at 8 o'clock, it is going to attack. One of the things it's going to attack is your insulin receptor. And it wants to remove that insulin receptor. But then if you had a heavy breakfast that morning, the insulin would come in and block the steroid from breaking down the receptor. So people who are not eating heavy in the morning continuously is eroding their receptors. So after a while, the insulin effect will decline, and obviously they develop diabetes. But why do you need to fast one day? Because remember, these receptors are going to get old. So what is happening on the fasting day is that the steroid will take out the old receptors to make room for new receptors to come in. And obviously the next 6 days, the insulin will protect those receptors. So that's a little synopsis of how it protects its interaction with diabetes. I mean, I could do the same for cholesterol, for hypertension, and explain it. But for the in the interest of time, we just look at diabetes alone today. The next question always come up with diet is, what is a balanced diet? And that's what Ezekiel 4 is trying to tell us. And again, I'm looking at it from a scientific point of view. We see Ezekiel, God tells Ezekiel that he must pray for the city, and he gives him a menu to make a particular bread, and that's the only bread he must eat for the next 390 days. And I think later on in the story, God, I think, extended an additional 40 or 50 days. I can't remember exactly the amount of days. Now, obviously, if God is going to put him on a diet, the only thing he's going to consume for this period, it must be balanced. And when you examine the Ezekiel 4:9 bread, which was a bread he used the food ingredients to make, it runs 65 to 75% carbohydrates, 15 to 20% protein, and 5 to 10% fat. This is very interesting because in the 1960s, when the scientists designed what we call a food pyramid, or the old food pyramid, this was how it was designed. So the scientists were telling us in the 1960s how we should eat actually was correct, or consistent with Ezekiel 4:9. What they are telling us now, obviously, does not reflect that. Sometimes people look at the Daniel story and the Nebuchadnezzar diet, and people conclude that this passage is telling us that we should just eat fruits and vegetables. Actually, the Nebuchadnezzar diet is really a low-carb diet. This is the first time, I think, low-carb diet was recorded. And obviously, the Babylonians were experimenting with it because they were feeding with meat and wine. Meat and wine are proteins and fat. Wine is metabolized, or alcohol is metabolized like fat. So what you saw was a low-carb diet being challenged against Daniel diet, which was pulses, as you see in King James version, which is really peas and beans. Peas and beans and milk are the only two foods that are balanced on their own. So what you saw there was a competition between a balanced diet and a low-carb diet. And we all know the story went, how Daniel was looking far better than his Nebuchadnezzar, the ones who had Nebuchadnezzar diet. So Ezekiel 4:9 bread is consistent with the old medical food pyramid, And that's a little picture there of the food pyramid. We designed a plate at the Sabbatical Diet Wellness Clinic to make it simpler for our patients. We tell them that half of your plate must be starch, quarter of it must be fruit and vegetables, and quarter should be proteins or legumes. And they should have a 2 to 3 teaspoons of sugar. Because remember, the manna was not only starchy, it was also sweet, because you need that short-acting insulin. All right, so in summary, the sabbatical diet is structured along the fundamental principles by which all machines operate. Now, you could look at the body as a biological machine. If you were in charge of managing an airplane, one of the things you will tell the pilot to do is that he must fuel up in the morning before he starts his journey. If he's flying from Norman Manley to New York, you're not going to say to him, oh, okay, when you go to Florida, get your fuel in Florida and then fly on to New York. You're going to tell him that before he leaves the tarmac, make sure he refuel the plane. Obviously, he's going to work that airplane, and after a certain amount of miles, he's going to send it in for maintenance. And that is how the body is operated on a 7-day system. You feed in the morning, you operate it during the day, and every 7 days, you send it in for maintenance. If you're interested in the science, the heavy science, then there is a book on Amazon, which I wrote back in 2007, on the sabbatical diet, and that's available there. But if you're just interested in the simpler version, you can go on sabbaticaldiet.com, and there's a free, simple version of it available there. You can download a PDF booklet, about 40 or 50 pages, which goes through much more detail on this subject. So in fact, the problem is not that the biblical expectation is wrong, it's just that we have messed up the pattern in which we eat food, and that has resulted in a lot of these diseases we are seeing. But there's more to it than just the pattern, because as we do in week 2 and week 3, we'll realize that the changes that we have done with food and water is also contributing to the problem. All right, I'll finish that for now, and then we can have some questions and discussion here further. Gladstone, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Very well done. A lot of good information. Before we go on, we'd like those who are on the line, on the Zoom, to introduce themselves. And we're looking to you to ask Dr. Robinson the questions that you might have. So can we get a quick introduction of all those who are on the Zoom, on this Zoom line tonight?
Hi, good evening. My name is Neva Shillingford King, and I'm happy to be here. I'm a resident of this district.
Thank you. Neva is the First Lady of the 12th District in the Bronx. Thank you for being here.
Night, everyone. Andrew Williams. Appreciate the invite and great information, as I can see.
Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Hi, good night, everyone. My name is Regina Solomon. I live in the Bronx, and I want to say thank you for the presentation and the invitation to be a part of the presentation, because I learned a great deal tonight. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Maybe no one else would like to to introduce themselves. Yes, go ahead. You have to unmute.
Hello, my name is Clover. I'm living in Brooklyn.
Welcome, Clover. And Clover, you're actually using the product, is that right?
Yes, I'm on the fourth bottle.
You're on the fourth bottle.
Yes.
Tell us about what it has done for you.
Well, I got this the name of this from my daughter in Jamaica, and I look it up and I found where it is, and a friend of you pastor give me your number and I call you about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to take it about a month now. I went to the doctor with some pain in my breast and do some tests on it. I can say that pain and burns that I used to feel, I'm not feeling it no more. And some of the tests that I do, everything is okay. My blood pressure is okay, but only thing, my cholesterol is a little bit high.
So you have received, you're seeing positive results from using the product?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And I will introduce it to other people because I guess my church sister is on the line. I introduce it to her also.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Are there any other introductions, or if there are any questions that you have for Dr. Robinson, please feel free to ask him. You have to unmute before you speak. Shirley, introduce yourself.
Yes, good evening or good night. My name is Cheryl Johnson, and I live here in the Bronx, New York. And I have been using the product for several years, more than 10 years. And it has really been an asset to me. I used to suffer with extreme severe water retention, so much so that my legs would get so swollen that my pants and so would not be able to fit. And since I've been using the product, I have not had to take any of the water tablets that I used to take. And also my energy is quite high, and I do a lot each day. I have like a 10-hour work day, sometimes even more, and I have a lot of energy. I can wake up early in the mornings and I'm ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else?
Yeah, Pastor God, Andrew. So I know Marjorie received a bottle, and we're on and off taking it, not as consistent as we should. But I think it's a good product. We started to try to be consistent in taking it. But I just want to ask Dr. Robertson. I mean, the taste. We can work on the taste. But anyway, it's a good product though. But you just once you take it over a period of time, then you get used to the taste itself. So it's great. All right. So we just need to be consistent in taking it.
Right. Yeah, I take it every day myself, and what I find, I use it in my tea or coffee or even a cold drink, whatever I'm drinking. I use it in it, so it becomes a routine to take it every day, and the taste becomes less of an issue.
Right. When we deal with the prebiotics, which will be next week, I'll probably explain a little more why it's not why you have that problem issue with the taste, because prebiotics in general are like that. So it's really a problem with when you use high prebiotics. Prebiotics are, as I said before, are in wine. The thing is that there's enough alcohol in the wine to mask it. If you were to take out the alcohol out of wine, it would taste very much like Jamunogizer.
Okay, okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else would like to share or ask a question?
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, hi. I'm in Chicago and I learned about this. And did I miss how you were going to purchase it or the payment structure of this?
Okay. No, you did. You did miss that. We the product is available from New York. It's called the Jamunogizer.
Is there like a website or something or what? Because I'm in Chicago.
Yes, yes. So you can go to Jamunogizer.com. Jamunogizer.
JAM what now?
Jamunogizer.com.
.com.
And
Okay.
then if you have any issues, you want to call this number, 914
914
275
275
3961.
3961. Okay. So I was just curious. So I mean, are you? Is this like an Amway thing or an affiliate marketing thing or what? Because I got this on my messenger, and I was just curious what this was all about.
The product is available for sale, and if someone showed an interest in marketing the product, that could be arranged.
And who would I talk to about that?
You would talk to myself. My name is Gladstone Johnson.
Okay.
And the number I gave is my number.
Okay. And this is New York, or what time is
Yes,
this?
this is in New York, yes. And then I'll share your interest to Dr. Robinson and his team in Kingston, Jamaica.
Okay, so could I call you? What would be a good time to call you? After this seminar or tomorrow?
Tomorrow would be better.
Okay, like what, between 9 to 5 or
yeah, between 12 and 5.
12 and 5, I guess that's Eastern time?
Eastern time, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to know what this was about because you popped up on my messenger. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Mm-hmm.
All right, just remind you that if you want a synopsis on the book for the Sabbatical Diet, you can get it at sabbaticaldiet.com. Sabbatical Diet, all lowercase. And there's a free booklet there, how to apply it, simple application of Sabbatical Diet, and you can download it there for free.
Okay. I guess, Dr. Robinson, I don't know if you can share with us a little more about using the product or other.
Okay. All right. Well, on the product is really two formulation, which, as I said, we're going to be getting to more next week and the following week. It's usually you take a teaspoon at least 2 or 3 times a day, and you take the teaspoon preferably before a meal. All right. And why we say before a meal? Because a very important part of your health is the bacteria colony that lives inside your colon, and it feeds on the food you consume. Now, because of the high level of preservatives, I'll touch it in a little next week talk, that colony is not healthy. Now, if that colony is healthy, it plays a very vital role in your immune system. In fact, some scientists believe that up to 90% of your immune system resides in your colon. So we take it just before you eat, and that will ensure that the food is consumed by the bacteria in the proper way, and they play, as I say, a major part in maintaining your health. So you take it you get it 2 or 3 times a day. Sometimes we recommend that in the night you could rather take it with food, you can stick it with water. But in the day, say for breakfast and dinner, we recommend you take it just before your meal.
Thank you. And then also, I know you've had quite a lot of success with the product in Jamaica. So can you share some of that briefly, I know, with us?
Okay. Well, we use the product for virtually all kind of diseases. One of the areas we are extremely successful in now is cancer treatment. We do see a lot of cancer patients at our clinic. We have a clinic called the Sabbatical Diet Wellness Clinic. We also treat cancer patients in Grenada. If you go to our website, that's it, Sabbatical Diet or Immunogizer.com, you'll see a number of testimony there. Recently, we treated a doctor from Grenada who had stage 4 lung cancer with metastasis to the brain. She actually went to Florida for treatment, and they told her that they could only offer palliative treatment. Well, she's doing quite well back in Grenada now, and she's back to work, and she gives a little testimony there. We're hoping to have her on the 4th week to come on and to say a little more about her success. Recently, we have been noticing a lot of our Parkinson's disease patients are reversing. We're doing extremely well with that now. Arthritis, asthma, these are things before we were doing quite well with them. So most conditions which we have encountered at the clinic, we are getting very good results and resolution.
Thank you very much, Doc. Any other questions? We want to encourage you to also to share this information and to be back on to hear the next segment of the presentation next week, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Doctor, can you review the other segments that you'll be covering, please?
Okay. As I mentioned, the product is really 2 formulations. What we have been doing is studying wine. And wine has 2 main formulas in it. One, which is a prebiotic, we just said a little about. It helps to ensure that the bacteria colony in your colon is stable and beneficial. The other formula that is in wine actually helps to remove your free radicals. Now, free radicals is something you develop because you're using oxygen, and free radicals is what leads to all its oxidants in your body that leads to damage of tissues and various other conditions. Now, there is a formula that is in the water that is part of wine. Obviously, water is the main component of wine that removes these free radicals from your body. Once you remove the free radicals from the body, your white cells, which is your immune cells, works much better, and they can remove diseases, as we mentioned, cancer and so on. The stem cells also works better, which repairs the body. So, like for instance, I mentioned the patient with Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is due to a damage in the brain, and what we are seeing is the recovery of those damage due to the activation of the stem cell by removing the free radicals and so on. So those are the things we're going to, next week we'll be looking at the prebiotic aspect of it, and the following week we look at what we call, it's referred to as desmutation catalysts. Those are the particles that are responsible for removing the free radicals.
Okay.
Dr. Robinson, can I ask you a question? Since it impacts the brain, does it also help with Alzheimer's?
Yes, it does help with Alzheimer's. We have a testimony on the Immunogizer website of a teacher from rural Jamaica who had Alzheimer's, and the daughter took her to us. And she's actually in the US right now. She got caught in the whole COVID thing. And she's doing much better. And the daughter will tell in that testimony how she's doing and that she's improving.
Nice. Okay. Thank you.
Miss Shillingford King wanted to say something. You have to turn on the mic, right?
Hi, so one of my questions is, because I know I have, when it comes to taking medication, if it's not sweet or it has a bitter taste, I tend to stay away from it. So I wanted to ask, is there, does it come in pill form?
We do have it in a powdered form, not in the pill form, but you can actually mix it in your juice. You could mix it in a glass of water or in a glass of juice and consume it like that, so it would remove the the bitter taste which you would want to avoid.
Yeah, and it is sweetish. So actually, when I put it in my tea or coffee in the morning, I don't need to use any sugar in it.
Right.
Okay. Well, if there are no more questions, we want to thank all of you who have come on tonight, and we want to thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Okay.
We believe that you're being led by the Lord to develop this product, and now that we're getting it into the diaspora, I think many of us are going to be helped by it. Now, Pastor Peart asked me to ask you a question. It has to do with one of the challenges that we have here in the diaspora, because we grew up in the sunshine, and we don't have as much sunshine here in North America, that a lot of us have the vitamin D deficiency. And so he wanted to know if it's possible to infuse this product with vitamin D.
Are you saying to add vitamin D to the product?
Is it possible? Yeah.
Well, yes, you could add vitamin D. The problem with vitamin D, as you know, is a fat-soluble vitamin. So you will have a little problem with the water, and water is a water-soluble product. But I mean, you could take vitamin D along with the product.
Okay, so it wouldn't. It would be better to just use it
along
along with.
Problem with mixing it wouldn't that mix out very easily, because one is fat and one is water-soluble, right? Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right. Again, we want to thank everybody for being here tonight, and we're just invite you to come back next Thursday at 7 p.m. and we'll continue the conversation. Thanks again, Dr. Robinson, and thanks to all of you, Andrew, Arlene, Clover.